Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the new media show. And I want to welcome my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good morning, Todd. It's great to be back. Fun times with some technical issues, which sometimes, when you go live, it's not everything works just right, as we found many times on this show.
Yeah, and I may have self-induced some issues today. During this morning, I was getting everything up and running, and I always, I just get the stream ready, and I think I accidentally hit stream, and I think I streamed for about 5 minutes live with no shirt on. And that may have been long enough for Facebook to block my account.
That's awesome, Todd. Yeah. I love that story.
Yeah, so who knows? I might be booted from Facebook. Who knows? But anyway, we're here and we've got a guest, Mr. Rob Walsh. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good, gentlemen. Good to see you again. It's been too long.
Yeah, and it's just like just the comedy of errors this morning, because I hit the stream button and it was like, yeah, it's up and going, and then no, it died. So yeah, who knows? But anyway, everyone, welcome to the show. We got a lot to talk about today, and we're only on YouTube, so I guess those of you that were planning on us being on Facebook, we're not here.
Well, I guess what the best place to get us would be just going to newmediashow.com/live. So if you wanted to share that, with others that are maybe trying to find us on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. So anyway, and of course you had Skype problems this morning, so you had to reboot. It seems like 25% of the time your Windows machine doesn't like Skype.
Well, I'm bouncing back and forth between different configurations for what I'm doing with my two different shows, and it sometimes causes a conflict in my system, I guess.
Right.
So anyway, I just need to know that and make sure I make adjustments.
Yeah.
But sometimes I forget.
All right. So I think we are recording the show. That's a good thing. At least I hit all those buttons. So anyway, Rob, you were saying there was a quote of the week that before we got started here that you wanted to share?
Yeah, well, Tom Webster wrote a really great article. I believe it was for, how was it? Neiman Labs? No. It was for radio. No, I think I'm confusing articles. I think it was for Neiman Labs, .com. But he had this quote about the future of podcasting and what's going to inspire fast growth is if we focus on creating, content that's a little bit more mainstream. And his quote of the week that I heard was, "We need to make content that's basically crap content, right? But it's high quality content, right? So it's this highly produced, more mainstream, generalized content." So the analogy that he used was the comparable analogy to the Roseanne TV show, right? It wasn't the best of content, but it was very well produced. So anyway, I don't know what you guys think about that quote, but
I don't know if I want to call podcasters' content crap.
Yeah, and I don't know if quote, I guess you call it popcorn type content is going to be what's going to drive the growth of it. It's a long tail, just long term, slow burn, slow growth. There's no hockey stick. It's not Oprah. Look, Oprah's in podcasting, right? That didn't do it. So how more mainstream do you want to get?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of, I think that there's a lot of players in this medium right now that are tired of seeing 1%, 2%, 3% growth every year. They want to see 10, 15, 20% growth every year. And I just don't know if it's realistic to kind of come up with that. I think, that there's people speculating about, just having one or two buttons or only linking to Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts on your website, or only, narrowing down the focus of the medium. And I think it's a little contrary to what built the medium. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, I think we should be everywhere and give listeners choices for everywhere.
Yep.
So, one thing we should ask Rob, Rob Bottom. And we're on Skype. Rob Greenlee's on the bottom monitor, and Rob Walsh is on the top. For those of you listening, Rob Walsh, what was your takeaways from Podcast Movement? I know that this has been probably talked to death on all the shows.
Well, yeah, and you guys covered it really well. And I wanted to reiterate that one of the things that you said, you'd mentioned the demographics. I mean, we were there, the three of us were there at the very first one, and it was 95-ish, maybe 97 or maybe even 98% male at that first one.
Mm-hmm.
And this one skewed, it was a lot more women at this one. And we looked at it just from a point of view of just a non-scientific point of view, is we ran out of our medium t-shirts on the first day. And we always, get the certain numbers, and then we ran out of the smalls right after that. So didn't run out of the extra larges or the 2X or 3X. And I don't think it's because podcasters all of a sudden are becoming fitter. I think it's the demographics have skewed, and there was a lot more women there. And
that's right.
That is obviously a great thing.
I think we take both, Mackenzie has ordered both women's and men's shirts. And
I do the same.
And I know that we gave away more women's shirts than we did men's shirts. So
I actually purposely ordered a lot more, like mediums on the women's side this year than I did even the prior year, because like you guys have been saying, I think we've been seeing this trend line for the last few years, where it's becoming, the people that go to Podcast Movement is pretty representative of the general population now. So I think we're definitely, it's much more diverse. It's not just additional women. There's a lot more diversity in the community right now, and I think that's a good sign to the growth in the long run, I think. So I agree with you guys.
Well, I'm multitasking a little bit today. I'm talking to my admin over at Podcast Awards. We're going to release the slate here in a few minutes, and he's like, "Can I flip it? Can I flip it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you can flip it anytime you want." So I think the overall the event was good, but we talked about a lot of topics last week that got some serious. There was a lot of chatter about the show last week, specifically talking a lot about radio and some of the stuff that was happening at the show. And of course, this week there's been some new, some new eye openers that just makes you want to grab someone by the shoulders and shake them a little bit. But Rob, your session was probably full to the gills too, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, my room was packed. I joked when I got up there, it was packed and it was hot. I go, okay, we're gonna learn about podcasting and lose 5 pounds in the next hour. And it's nothing to do with the guys at Podcast Movement. That is not their fault on the air conditioning. And it's actually great that the room was packed. So kudos. You can't ask for anything more than getting there in a full room and people telling you afterwards I couldn't get in.
Yeah.
So next year, hopefully, they'll have some bigger rooms and the AC will work. Yeah, I think
that's something they're going to have is bigger rooms, just because they're getting more people. That just more people are attending the sessions too. So that'll work out well.
What they go from 1,600 to 23 to 2,500, somewhere in that range this time, and that's a huge increase.
It's a huge
in 1 year.
Mm-hmm. And I know that it didn't look like Dan was too much worse from wear, and Jared, didn't look like they were stressing too bad, but I know Dan had a very determined look on his face most days.
Yeah, I didn't even bother trying to talk with him. I'm like, okay, this is well, we can always talk after the event.
Yeah,
let him get stuff done. I'm sure his stress level was pretty high.
So I'm curious to get a reaction here, and I'm sure you all saw the headline yesterday. What do you think about a certain entity saying that they're capturing 2/3 of the new podcasters in the podcasting space?
I'm gonna change my definition of podcast. I always said you had to have an RSS 2.0 feed, be in Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and I'm gonna add to it and have 5 episodes. And now let's rerun those numbers.
Actually, do you say you have to have 3 episodes?
No, I'm gonna go 5. We'll go 5.
I'm gonna go 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 5.
Rob, you're laughing. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I do think that it's kind of a reflection of where we are. I think that there's a lot of desire from some big investors, and we talked about this last week, that are interested in the space, that want to grow it faster. I think that the common thread is that there's more interest in the medium, and there's more interest in growing it faster than we are growing today. And people are pushing the envelope and thinking that the pathway to do that is to do some disruption in the medium and to start doing things that that I think all of us have kind of like said we're just not going to do. We're not going to go there. We're not going to do those types of things generally. And I think we're in a different phase here. I think we're in a phase of maybe potential faster growth, but I'm just not convinced that no matter what these new people coming into the medium, that it's going to cause it to grow any faster than it's going to grow. As we all know, guys, I mean, this is a word of mouth medium. It's not going to grow like Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. This is a different medium than those.
And I want to give a number here. I want to give you some stats here. That company claiming to have brought in a third of the new podcasters. One of the top five, maybe three podcast consumption platforms looked over 30 days, and that quote unquote company in 30-day period, 80% of their shows had 0 plays. Think about that number. 80% had 0 plays of those shows. Even their own podcasters weren't going in and playing them. And it got up, almost to like 85%, or it's well over 90% were less than less than 10 plays. So the numbers are a complete wash. So yeah, there's people coming in, they're looky-loos. They're seeing, hey, does this thing work? Hey, is the mic on? Hello, can you hear me? Hey, Mom, look at me. And that's their last episode, and it's their first episode, and it's their middle episode, and it's their only episode. But that's not a podcast.
That doesn't even qualify as pod fade. Mm-hmm. You have to pod start. But but that said, based upon the emails that all of our customers are getting, and we have to disclose here, we all run and work in podcasting companies, is that they're desperate, or there is entities desperate for content. They want content bad, and listen, so if they can't get them on their own, they're going to go poach them from somebody else.
Well, yeah, that's also the thing that happened this past week too, is efforts to, steal customers from other people. And I guess this stuff has kind of been going on for a long time, so this isn't anything new. It's just, I think what's different about it is that it's the efforts that are being made right now are very, their intentions could be kind of destructive to the medium. And I think, I wanted to mention here and just kind of throw into the mix that, sure, I think all of us want to have new podcasters come into the medium, and I guess and that's always what we want. But I guess there's a standard, that we have, guys, that of how these podcasters come into the medium, and what will create a situation where they can build something successful for themselves and not waste their time. And I think that's what's kind of at the crux of the question here is, how can all of us, learn from what this other company is doing, and maybe make things easier. But making things easier also is a double-edged sword too. If you make things too easy, then I think you see what happens at this company is people don't come into the medium with the proper amount of respect for the medium, and then expect something that's so easy. But this is not an easy medium, and no medium is easy actually to do it well.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, what I'm going to think you're going to see is some of these directories and places will start putting in a minimum number of episodes needed to get in their directory, and I think that's going to be the downside of what happens. Is before, where you could have been a content creator launching a new podcast, really be behind it, that you're going to get in the future, you're going to get locked out of being in these new platforms, because they're going to look at all this crap and the work that it takes and how it's cluttering it up and say, you know what, forget it. you're not 5 or more, you can't get in. And now we're going to come back to those days. Oh, you got to launch with 5 episodes again. And now we're back to that.
That was one of the reasons why when we did tech podcasts in the early days, I required a minimum of 7 to 10 shows, because I would go through and people would apply to be on the website, and they would be 2 episodes in, and I would approve them, and then I'd come back a month later and look, and they're still 2 episodes in. So it just became, like you said, Rob, became an administrative nightmare to manage it. So I just made the 7 shows is the minimum you have to have done at least before you even be considered. And that is still the policy I have over on that particular site. And it's served me well.
Yeah, on our deal that we did with iHeartRadio, there's a minimum of 5 episodes that have to be in your feed before iHeartRadio will accept your show. So there's a little bit of precedent for that. But also, I do kind of worry about that though too, guys, because I know that that there are shows, good quality shows, that would love to start and get distribution before they kick off their first episode. So it's too bad that that opportunity would be spoiled, because it would change the launch methodology for many high quality programs. So that's the downside to it, unless there's exceptions made for certain content providers.
But at the same time too, I've got podcasters that are coming on to me, and I'm seeing questions being asked now that never has been asked before. They're asking, you're going to submit you're going to submit my show to all these places, right? You're going to submit it to Apple, and
right.
And I'm like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah, I tell people, run away. I go, if somebody's submitting your podcast to Apple Podcasts, I go, run away.
Right. So, and then it's like, well, why? And then I have to go through. So we've had to create a whole brand new dialogue of tech support responses based upon, because everyone's thinking, oh, you're going to submit me, and I'm like, that's not how it works. So, and for the foretold reason. So.
Yeah, I agree. It is pushing an expectation that the hosting platforms are gonna take care of the promotions of your show, and that could be the fallout of this in the long run. I don't know. Do you guys feel that pressure more and more too to help shows gain audience?
Well, yeah. The 2 things people want are fame and fortune, right?
Right.
So they want anything, how are you going to promote my show is a question I've been hearing forever. How are you going to promote my show? And I would say, we're going to give you the tools to help you promote your show. We're going to give you the tools, to get out there to promote it. I go, but any, podcast hosting company or any company that tells you they're going to promote your show, you're kidding yourself, because there's so many shows. It's your job as the podcaster to promote your show. And really, it's your job as the podcaster to facilitate your audience to promote your show if you're smart.
There's, and it doesn't help too now, because people are so desperate to promote their show and get it out there and get reviews and everything else. Now you've got, all these folks are putting fake reviews up. That's fake, the fake review services. And I see more and more of those types of announcements, and they're being very bold and doing it right in social media, right in on podcasters' page. Hey, I'll help you get 100 reviews here. Follow my website and pay me some cash. So there's some of that going on too, and podcasters are trying to grow their show. They think reviews are going to lead to more audience members, and we all know that's not the case. So, it's always, you got to build organically and do the things you got to do in the trenches to build your show.
Yeah.
But it is, we also have to admit, we're okay. I've been in space since its beginning. Rob, you have both Robs. You guys have, even before. Yeah. And what we also have to fully realize is there's a new group of content creators that want, they don't want to deal with, they want to make it YouTube-ish. So it's, that's what we have. We have to understand that too.
Well, I think that there's a lot of content creators that are coming out of YouTube, coming over to podcasting, and I guess they have a certain expectation that maybe comes out of that experience. I don't know.
Yeah, they don't want to pay for hosting.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Yeah.
but at the same point, and we've talked about this before, is that look what YouTube has done for monetization for a large, 95 or 97% of their, their YouTube, maybe even higher, maybe 99% of channels on YouTube do not and will not ever get monetized. And those that are, the remaining 1% or 2%, or I don't know if YouTube's ever publicized those numbers or not, then you will, if you say one bad word in your show, you're demonetized. You can't use the F word or something. And it's just like being on TV, beep, and then your advertisers are removed.
Well, you could put in the penalty box.
You're right.
For a certain number of days, if you say, the S, you drop an S bomb or an F bomb. It's funny. But yeah, there's a lot of YouTubers that I talk with now that are so frustrated with the monetization Nazis over there, as they call them, that they're looking for other ways to get out their show and have control of it and say whatever they want to say and not worry about it.
Well, part of it was YouTube's fault to begin with, because they didn't get ahead of some of these content creators that were, recording and finding, had found a dead body and, all kinds of craziness. Mm-hmm. So it was their own fault. They didn't get ahead of their content control. And obviously they've got safe harbors issues they have to deal with, and they have to wait for someone to report something. But, with that big of a platform, how do you police it effectively? You don't. So then you have to go the other way and actually have very strict guidelines on who gets advertisers. That's how they solved it. They just demonetized a group of shows because they didn't want to have to monitor as close.
Yeah.
And I hope we never ever get to that point in the podcasting space. God forbid.
Well, I do think that we are coming into a new time to some degree, and I think we've seen a little bit of a glimpse of that in what happened this past week. And I know we should probably talk about what happened this past week with the Alex Jones podcast situation. I know it's a very divided subject, but we did see some behavior on some of the bigger platforms to kind of take a stand on this kind of stuff, and it did fall into the podcasting world.
Well, what those private companies decided to do, Rob, that was their decision, and it is what it is. But I think the bigger concern I have, and again, it's sometimes the extremes that make you see how powerful RSS is. Essentially, yeah, he was removed. He was removed from those platforms, but he's still on the air. His RSS feed is still alive.
Yeah, right.
And whether you
and he's able to stream off of his own servers. Unless his CDN takes him down, his First Amendment rights have not been 100% violated. So,
And at the same time, but one thing that content creators have to think about here and really think about is, as soon as Apple removed his shows from their directory, every podcast app that powers their app directory through Apple also. Right. And I laugh because I saw one app that was bragging on Twitter about having made the decision to take his content off the app. And I thought, you didn't make any decision. Apple made the editorial decision for you. They removed the show, thus it's no longer available in the API, thus it's no longer available on your app. So to me, it was disingenuous comment that they had made, and my point was that the folks that have apps are not being required to make the hard decisions about content that's out there. So, but it also should raise people's eyebrows a little bit, because all these apps are powered off the Apple directory. What do you guys think about that? It's basically Apple's decision got his stuff. Now, again, let's not talk about the content.
I think I saw one of the quotes that someone said he said, and he did cross the line. And these guys are usually good about not crossing the line. And he said something about I don't. This is not the official quote, but what I read was that he said something about going and shooting Mueller or going after Mueller.
Oh, I'm not arguing
once you cross that line, once you promote violence,
you're gone.
That's the line. Usually these guys are really good at dancing, tiptoeing up to the line. They know where the line is and they don't cross it. I was actually surprised that he crossed the line.
But I don't want to even argue the fact that he was removed. I don't care. That's Apple's decision. They did that. Okay, those decisions, it's moot point. My point is that if Apple decided, and this is probably not going to happen, but if Apple removed another show that they thought they didn't like, and again, this is a hypothetical, they are effectively removed throughout the entire podcast ecosphere.
It's a lot of power they have.
Right. A lot of editorial power.
It's about 80%. Again, I show in the slides, I go, it's not just the 62%, it's the other 15% of those aggregator apps that pull from them.
Yeah, it's the 15 Android apps. It's the 6 or 7 iOS apps. Yeah,
there's a lot more. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of little ones we don't even talk about that never get, hardly get any traction that are out there in the stores.
But immediately, that editorial decision by Apple was what resulted in the ripple effect across all these podcast apps. So again, I don't want to argue that the content needed to be taken up or taken down. That's those companies' decisions to make.
Yeah, and I think it was a good example, Todd, of what you've been saying for a long time. I mean, Alex, he basically had a dual syndication strategy, which is has kept him alive. I mean, he had his own podcast feed off of his own server that was primary feed that he had in Apple Podcasts, but he also had a secondary feed that he was hosting on Spreaker. And so I got pulled into the whole situation because he used us to get into Spotify and into the iHeartRadio platform and other places, right? So I got pulled into this whole thing too, and it was a very uncomfortable place to be, as you might imagine, as these bigger companies are cracking down on this guy. So, I mean, it was a tough decision for us to make, to take down. Now, we didn't take down all of his shows because he had 5 that were hosted on our platform, but we did take down his main one. But it was, it was a tough choice for us to decide. I'm a free speech guy. I mean, I don't like taking down shows. I hate it. It's the worst thing in the world because as a hosting platform, and you guys know what I'm talking about, it's a no-win situation for us.
Right.
I mean, no matter what we do, we get bashed.
Yeah.
So all we can do is legally, and I talked a lot about this on my Speaker Live show this week. Really, really got into the weeds because my co-host is kind of supportive of what Alex Jones is all about. So he was very vocal and created a real strong dialogue between us on this topic. And I really had to defend it to some degree, our choices in what we did with this. But, I could really see from these companies because I got contacted by Spotify and they were very, they were very thoughtful about it. They actually initially took down just 2 episodes. And then ultimately when Apple decided to take everything down, actually they took everything down except for one separate show because Alex had like 5 shows, 5 separate show feeds. And they left up one of his show feeds. But eventually they all basically took most of it down. I think Apple
how much
left up
bone
one
meal
of his,
protein shake can you sell?
Right. I mean, I could kind of tell. I went and watched his video. I mean, he had his live video show was still off of his website. He still had his RSS feed. He still had the ability to get into to some apps that you could, we had to go old school, Todd. He had to go back to where we started with this medium on the podcasting side. And it really was a eye opener when you really think back and you look back on what happened to him. That's where we all started. There weren't aggregator apps out there. There weren't, and Todd, this plays right into what you've been saying for years, is that owning your own feed does put you in a position of control.
Right. And so, and I think, just if you look, it always is the worst stuff that goes on the space and that really makes you understand where the weak spots are. And in this instance, I think what the takeaway here is that RSS continues to be the great equalizer, and we can't be controlled, manipulated, or taken out. Now, you might you might have a uproad to hoe if you have, if you're, let's say you're a white supremacist, you might lose your website, you might lose your domain, you are going to have a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, some people have lost their domains.
Right.
Some people have lost their domains at different registrars.
Right. And if that
gone to that point,
if that happens, it's it's pretty much game over. You're going to have to figure out other ways to get on. But for the for the 99.9999% of the folks that are out there that are creating great content today, I think that you're going to find that this should be pretty reassuring to people that you can't be essentially bushwhacked and taken out.
Well, I think that the last line of defense for online freedom of speech, if you want to say that, is the CDNs, right?
Oh, that's true
the
too.
Guys that host your website and give you bandwidth at the top end of the distribution spectrum here. And up to this point, those folks that host Alex Jones, I don't know if he's got his own servers co-located somewhere. I mean, that's what I did for many years. I had to have my own servers. At one point, I had 4 or 5 servers co-located in 2 different co-location facilities to distribute my show. And I wasn't reliant on like a GoDaddy or somebody like that that had kind of a public presence. But I think really the reason that I raised this is more to do with I don't think that Alex got censored necessarily. I think that these companies and we're included in this. We have terms of service that we have, and we're put in this position where we have to choose based on what our legal principles are, that we built our company to protect our users and to protect our company. And I think that is separate from free speech.
So Rob, do you think that the folks now will go after the CDNs and the hosting companies? Do you think that'll be the next line of attack that we're going to have to watch how this plays out. We're going to have to see if this goes further.
It's a possibility, Todd. I mean, I think that could happen. It depends on what he's doing on that side. But that is his last line of opportunity for his online free speech. Yeah.
Yeah. The keyword is online free speech.
People go after everybody. I mean, at some point, if someone's offended, they're going to go after everybody they can. We've had crazy requests to take shows down. I think my favorite crazy one of all time was this woman complaining that this other woman had a podcast, and she was talking about how her husband, the crazy woman, was the woman was talking. So let's say that the podcaster woman was saying that this crazy woman's husband was cheating on her. How did the podcaster know? Well, she was sleeping with her husband, and she mentioned that and didn't name names, but gave enough information. And the lady's crazy lady's like, my husband's not sleeping with her, and you need to take this down. I'm like, lady, if someone's saying they're sleeping with your husband, asking for their podcast to be taken down is the least of your problems at this point.
Yeah, take it up with her and your husband.
Well, and I think we've talked about this on the show before, but the other thing that happens quite frequently is when co-hosts get into feuds and they start bashing each other on their show, and
they break up.
Yeah, exactly.
Couple, and they break up.
Yeah.
And love turns to hate.
We've got one in a court case. The show is sitting in limbo until the court proceedings are finished.
We have a very simple policy at Lipson. The email that registered is the owner. It's not the credit card. It's not who's paying for it. It's the email that registered it. That's it. That's the only one that controls it, period. So when there's a couple breakup, sorry, I don't care that you paid for it every month. It's their email address. That's it.
Yeah. But there can be, it can get pretty contentious.
Oh yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've had some nasty couple breakups where they got down and dirty, and yeah, you don't like to be in the middle of that.
So one thing though we have to also recognize too in this whole thing with Alex Jones is that if he'd been on radio, he'd have been fired. He'd have been gone. You know.
Well, he is on 160 radio stations. I didn't hear whether or not they pulled him off the air or not.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. So is his content different on the radio than it is on his podcast, or is it the same exact content?
I don't think so. I think it's the same.
Yeah, again, if it's the quote, if he said the quote that I read,
he would probably be gone.
I mean, because I think every one of us agree that when you cross that line and you promote violence,
right,
threaten,
right,
that's a clear line. I think everybody, even the EFF, everyone, no matter how liberal we are or who you are, everyone agrees that's the line you don't cross. One
thing that I also found curious is that they spoke in generalities. They did not point to on episode 832 at Time Hack 1560.
Spotify did though.
Oh,
Todd.
They did.
Yeah.
So Spotify actually specifically
took down just 2 episodes.
But did they publicly say where in the episodes the violation happened? Or did they just say, yeah, see, this is...
I don't think that they actually pointed to like a timestamp or something.
Right. So, because I think the reason they don't want to do that is because then people know where the line is. They say, oh, this is what got this person banned. I can go right up to this line. And as long as I don't go over that line, I'm okay. So maybe that's why they didn't give, they talked in a lot of generalities, hate, violence, but they didn't give specifics. So, I don't have 50 hours to listen to that to go through and find that spot where that happened either.
Mm-hmm.
So, nor do I want to.
Right.
But
obviously a lot of people do.
Yeah, well, it's, right? And again, I have never listened to his show, so it's not, it's just, I don't want to have to, let me rephrase that. I don't want to have to go through 50 hours of content to find the 15 seconds that caused the ban,
Right. Yeah, I mean, Alex Jones is not a new player to the podcasting speed. I mean, I had contact with his organization when I was at Microsoft working on Zune. I mean, he's been podcasting for probably 10 years.
Yeah.
So he's certainly not a new player to this medium. But I do think that his rhetoric over time has changed.
Yeah.
And got more and more extreme so he can keep in the headlines. And that, like I said on my other show, Alex Jones is an entertainer, right? At the end of the day, he's looking to build a business. He's looking to monetize what he's doing. He's looking to stir people up. That's what those guys do. Let's be honest with him about it. He may believe what he's saying, but maybe, who knows, Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to get into psychoanalysis of someone's content. Yeah. That's not my job.
You bet.
But, I think
for all we know, he drives a Prius and is actually transgender. So
right. You never know,
just
right?
Playing a character on television.
Now there's a headline.
Hey, there's my conspiracy theory.
That's awesome.
Oh, my God.
That's awesome, Rob. Yeah.
But again, though, I think that as podcasters, we should be two things. And I guess I know, and we can wrap this up. I'm beating a dead horse here. Is number one, the RSS feed is a great equalizer. And number two, Apple has a lot of content control over the space. Just by so many of these apps are codependent upon their directory. That bothers me a little bit.
Well,
it bothers me a lot.
Todd, the first platform to completely take him down was Stitcher. I don't know if you guys knew that or not.
No.
Yeah.
So they're a directory.
Yeah.
So.
And it's a separate submission. They don't pull from Apple.
Yeah.
So you have to submit separate.
Right.
So like TuneIn doesn't pull, and iHeart don't pull.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, in most of these, how many apps now still allow you to manually subscribe with an RSS feed? Do most of them do that?
Almost all of them. Yeah. I mean, some of them you have to search real hard, but yeah. And some of them, by the way, some of the directories apps out there, if enough people put in the same RSS feed, they add it to the directory.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Because I was, I've been a podcast iOS app for years, and that's what I use. It works for me. So I've, I don't have a lot of opportunity. I just don't use a lot of apps. So I guess I need to go in and look and see. But that's reassuring, because you're essentially, it's old school. Take this feed, copy it, paste it. When you're on a mobile device, it's not as easy. So I was actually talking, here's a thought then. How do we revitalize RSS so that it has more of the powers of what the one-click subscribe and one-click subscribe in Apple? How do we make RSS again a more viable, without having to explain cut and paste and all this stuff?
I've seen some people saying, oh, you should have one click on your site, and there should be one button, and that will redirect to Apple this and Apple that. And when you do that, you remove the RSS from the picture. You still need to have a button for your RSS. You still should have, here's my RSS feed. You should have that on your website.
How can we make that button more valuable, though? Make that button more so that these folks that didn't start in podcasting in 2004 don't know that this is actually what powers this whole space. How do we make it? Do we even want to even mess with that?
I don't know if we want to mess with it, because it starts getting the average everyday consumer coming to the site. It's one thing to say, here's the RSS feed. It's another thing to start going into too much about it.
Right.
I think RSS still goes over most people's heads, but having it available is still, I think, very valuable. And when I do come to people's sites and I don't see the RSS feed link, that bothers me. I think they really need to make sure it's there.
Well, yeah. And the majority of podcasters don't give two wits about the RSS feed. They never put it on their website. So yeah, and they know it needs to be, how it works to get them where they need to get, but they don't like even having it on the site. But it may make listeners of today's show at least think a little bit about it. And then I'm not saying that Apple's going to go start randomly removing shows, but they have removed shows from the directory in the past. This is not something that's new per se.
Well, and if these big platforms start getting flooded with episodes or shows that have only 3 episodes of people testing how to do a podcast, and Apple's going to get these catalogs are going to get flooded with bad quality programs, and they're going to have to start deleting more, I think.
Test. This is a test. This is a test of my brand new podcast I'm launching in 2 years. Test.
Right. Does Apple want that stuff in their catalog? I don't think so.
Well, it's there.
Well, they put Anchor's logo up on the screen when they did their show. They invited in the crap, so now they have to deal with it.
Right. And the Spotify and all the other platforms are going to have to deal with it too.
Yes, they are. Oh, by the way, I got an email because I asked Spotify, because I kept getting questions. What does a play mean in Spotify?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds. And it's going to change to 60 seconds. But for right now, it's 30 seconds. If someone has listened, at least the definition was still a little vague. That if they listen at least 30 seconds, it's considered a play. So how are we?
If they come back to that episode and they listen some more, it's not another play.
Well, that's good.
Because they know
in
how far
what
people
time
listen.
frame, though, Rob?
Well, just as soon as you hit 30 seconds, it registers. Once you've gotten past 30 seconds of consumption in an episode, my understanding is that then becomes a play in their system that gets reported back in their stats.
Okay. So how are we?
What if they come back and resume?
It doesn't get it. It's just once they hit the 30 seconds, it registers as a play, and that's it.
Okay.
Right.
So
if they come back and listen to another 30 seconds, that's not a second play.
So we've went through all this pain. I mean, oh my God, we went through all this pain of, fighting for 3 years, 4 years now to get these IV guidelines in place. And we've made huge progress in that realm. Now I've got a new number for advertisers. How do
we blend
how do
that
we
in, right?
you
Yeah.
can't blend it in. It has to be a separate reporting line, and then
Yeah, we have it as a separate item. We have the Spotify stats
Yeah,
broken out
we
as
do
a
too.
separate item. We don't merge them into the regular numbers. We say they're an addition, and then we just present it, going, hey, they had this number of downloads per the IAB, and then we had this number of plays per Spotify.
So it's the same situation, because we really, we're getting the stuff to the IB where it's pretty damn good. Excuse my French. But the Spotify stuff is, I can see that going. I get just talking to media buyers. Oh, how can you tell that they listened? And well, we can't tell
It's
that
the same old conversation.
It's the same story.
Yeah.
So my email is Spotify. Please give us some. Give us some more data. Give us some more data. You've got it. They know. They got the client side data. They know when someone has stopped and played and where. So I would really love to see that, but I don't know if we'll ever get it. Because that really shows huge insights into their platform too that they may not want shared.
Well, it gets back to the same thing. They're caching episodes, and that
except
that
for
isn't
NPR,
good for the medium, right?
Except for NPR,
right. There are exceptions, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. I think that's the first time we've said that, Todd. Yeah.
So, Rob, what are you seeing happen in this space? Anything that you've got some takeaways? Are you seeing what's going on?
Well, I was mentioning last night, I was at an event that had 8,000 people over 8,000 people at this live event for a podcaster.
Really?
Yeah. And of course, it was Joe Rogan, so it's not surprised on that name. But he was at an outdoor theater here in Kansas City, 8,000 people. Average ticket sales price was well above $50. And do the math on that.
Yeah. Nice payday.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he was going down to St. Louis to do a theater down there, but I think that theater was smaller, only 3,100. But the ticket prices were much higher at the one down in St. Louis. So I was looking at the prices there, and that looked like the average price was closer to 100.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and there's the power of podcasting, being able to get a live audience like that.
Yeah.
Well,
especially in one city too. That really speaks to the scale of his show.
And this is Kansas City. I mean, this is Kansas City. I mean, this isn't a huge metro area compared to others. And he was able to get 8,000 people here. So it was pretty interesting. It was a very eclectic mix of people there. Me and my wife were probably pushing we were the 1%ers at the top of the age group. But there were definitely people there from 18, 19, and to 30, 35. That's probably where the majority of the people fell in.
Being in Hawaii, we don't get too many live concert events per se. It's Roman Mars is coming. He's at a third concert, and it's all sold out. They sell out in minutes. The bots end up buying half the tickets. You have to get them from scalpers. But we don't get a lot of live events. So, been here 21 years, I'm kind of sheltered. We just don't go to those types of events here because they just don't make it here. And so it is interesting to hear 8,000 people showing up for his event he said an open air park. So,
open air, yeah. It's called Starlight Theater. Yeah.
So, probably his overhead of doing that show there wasn't too high. And, that makes for a nice payday. I wonder how that works out. You guys have went to some of these live podcast events. They were doing it at PodCon. What are we seeing numbers wise at these types of events? You guys been to very many of these?
Oh, it's all over the map, Todd. I mean, there's small ones and there's big ones. I mean, I've been to ones with Kevin Smith. I was actually just at one here in Seattle at Ace Comic-Con here in Seattle, just here like a couple months ago, and Kevin Smith had like maybe 1,000 people at this event. And
did he do it within the venue or external of the venue?
Well, it wasn't so much a live podcast. It's just, he's a podcaster, and he was up on stage, talking like he was doing a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like a solo, keynote kind of thing, but it's the same type of thing. I mean, he's gotten up on stage before. I've gone to Kevin Smith's stuff in Seattle in the past where he had 4,000 or 5,000 people in the audience, doing one of his shows, right? I'm actually recording it and then making it available in his podcast feed.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this stuff is going on all the time, and there's shows that are making more money from doing live events than they are selling advertising.
Love it.
Yeah. I was going to say, this brings us back to the question, or some of the things we were talking about earlier. It's like, what's going to grow this space? Is this space going to be grown by bringing in more content producers, or is this space going to be grown by bringing more audience? We talked about Podcast Movement, how great it was that Podcast Movement had 2,500 people. Rogan had 8,000 in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have another 3,100 in St. Louis tonight. Right?
It's a drop in the bucket.
That's bigger than
Yeah.
That's much bigger than what we saw. The podcasters are a small part. The audience is really where the masses are. The growth is about that. It's not about bringing in tons and tons of new content creators. It's about quality on the content creator side. Quantity, we got to talk about. That's when you talk about the consumption side. And how do we get more and more listeners? And I think what you saw last night was 8,000 people that were at that show. All 8,000 of them are listening to his podcast. And,
Right.
and if they hadn't been listening in the last couple of weeks, they're all going to be listening next week. Well, I think he's on vacation next week, but his next episode when it comes out.
Well, and that really kind of points back to what we said at the top of the show. Tom Webster saying high quality crap. There is something to what he's saying there, and I think, Rob, you just tapped into it. It's not so much that we need more, another 100,000 or 200,000 podcasts. What we need is a good number of shows that are solid and will gather audience and grow this medium. Because I'm not sure that distribution will grow this medium necessarily. I think that, at the end of the day, content, a lot of these studies are coming back saying we need to give listeners a reason to listen to these shows.
Mm-hmm.
What is the reason? I think that's a much better question than just making the show available in Google or making it available on Android. I think that's part of the solution, but I do think that there needs to be more of a focus on why someone would care to listen to a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how you solve that, though.
Well, yeah, I think you had a person on last week, and he mentioned, and he said that it's hard to consume podcasts, and it's really not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 2 taps on a smartphone to listen to a podcast. It's just asking Siri on a HomePod to listen to a podcast. So consumption, the barrier to consumption has come way down from where we know how hard it was right in the early days.
Right.
And it's gotten a lot easier to consume. Yeah. So it's about now, like you said, having a reason for them to wanting to continue to consume it. There has to be the content there. And by the way, it's not all about huge blockbuster hits. It's about podcasts that hit the niche that audience member, that specific audience member wants to hear. Someone may want to listen all week long about knitting podcasts,
right?
Or podcasts, the horse podcast, the chameleon breeding podcast.
Yeah.
Having good quality content doesn't mean that it has to appeal to the masses. It just means it has to be good quality content for the niche it's intended for.
Mm-hmm.
There are still reaches in the niches.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm multitasking here. Rob, if you can lead the discussion for another minute or two, I'll be good.
Yeah, I think that the question around content, I think, is an important one, and the medium has been around a long time to really build out a lot of genres out there, and I don't know. I mean, I think that there's an expectation this medium's going to grow faster, and I'm just not. It's hard for me to think how that's really going to happen. Is it just because Google added the support for podcasting and Spotify is joining the fray? Is that what's going to drive it? Rob, what's your thought on that? I mean, or is it just, is it just going to keep doing what it's doing? Maybe 2, 3, maybe it's going to grow 1 or 2% more every year.
Well, we've seen decent growth the last few years. I think a lot of what these folks want to see is not 2x growth even. They want to see 10x, 20x growth.
That's right.
Yeah,
well,
and that's just
that's
not
what venture
happen.
capitalists want, right?
Right,
is
right.
exponential.
That's just not going to happen. But 25, 30, 50% growth is possible in a few years from where we are. In a couple of year period, it does have part of that is part of the distribution, making it easier for people to consume. Obviously, does help, but that's not going to cause the 20x. There's nothing that's going to cause a 20x growth or a 10x growth in podcasting. It's just not going to happen. There are people getting into this space that will tell you, oh, no, marketing. And I remember at the end of Podcast Movement, I saw a Twitter stream that Aaron Mahnke happened to lament in Twitter that everybody was talking about marketing and nobody was talking about the content. And then all the marketers jumped on him like, oh, you need marketing, da-da-da-da-da. And they're all beating him up. And I'm looking at the people that are beating him up and I'm going, okay, all of these people combined aren't 1/10 the audience size as Aaron's show. He does lore. And then some people were beating him up or disagreeing with him. They don't even have podcasts. I was looking at the people that were commenting on the string and I was just laughing. I'm like, okay, because I think a lot of those people, some of them were just wanting to sell lipstick for the pigs. Right, and they don't want to admit that you need to change the pig into something different to really make a show grow. So it is content. Good quality content still comes back to it. It's a slow grow. Will getting a native app, making it easier on Android, help grow podcasting? Absolutely. It will help. But it's not going to be 10x or 5x or anything like that.
Right,
guys. Do you think that the growth of podcasting over the next couple of years is really going to be seen more outside of the U.S.?
I think it's going to continue to grow like it has in the United States. Unless a country has a breakout, I don't see. I don't know. I have to go look at our hosting numbers. I don't see a big influx. I see them continue to trickle in from various countries. So I don't know, Rob. What do you think?
I think it comes down to it's going to be slow grow in those countries, but I think it's going to be percentage-wise for those countries faster than it is in the U.S. I think the U.S. isn't going to. I mean, we've got close to where we can get as far as getting the word out. People know about podcasting. There are countries out there that don't know about the word podcasting. That if you were to ask them what a podcast is, in some countries, you probably get 10%, if that, that know of it or have listened to it. Where in the U.S., what was the last numbers from Edison? It's well over 60% now know what a podcast is. So, more people know than don't know in the U.S. That's not the case in other countries.
Well, I did see some of the Edison research up in Canada, and they have a stronger percentage or a larger percentage of people of the population that listen to podcasts than the U.S. has. I thought it was an interesting trend line. I just wonder, because what I'm seeing outside of the U.S. Is it appears that it's growing faster than it is here. But they're also behind too, right? They're like at least 3 or 4 years behind the U.S. as far as adoption of the medium.
I was going to say maybe it has something to do with being cold because Sweden's really popular, but Brazil also has good consumption too, so that throws the cold out. Maybe if it's too hot or too cold, it does well.
There you go. Yeah.
So for those of you that are live that are interested, the slate is now live on podcastawards.com.
Oh, okay. That just happened just now?
Yeah, just now. That's why you've been hearing me in the background going.
Okay. Multitasking.
Yeah, I'm talking with the tech guy, and saying, okay, flip it. Go ahead, turn it on.
All right. Well,
so I'm gonna
go ahead and read the comedy ones because that's comedy's the number one topic.
Comedy one. The nominees are. Oh, what's he? Okay, hang on. I'll refresh the page. Oh, it's not up. But am I?
Because at least one thing we can all agree on has been the comedy's been the top
It's not up.
category
I jacked
as far
it
as
up.
consumption.
Right.
Yeah,
It's not up. I accidentally overwrote it when I updated the page, so he's gonna have to go back in and re-edit the code. That's funny. Oh my god, I can't believe it. Is there a way to look at the history? It's a little hashtag thing he has to put on the page. Oh man. So when he fixes it, I'll do it. I was editing when he was editing. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Anti-climax here.
So are we all going to PodCon this year?
Yeah, we're definitely in to go.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Matter of fact, I think Mackenzie has been pinging them over there, and we're kind of waiting for their package.
Yeah. Rob, are you thinking that you're going to attend?
Yeah. I think we haven't finalized it yet, but yes, that's one of the ones on my list that I'd like for us to be at next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you go to podcon.com, you can actually get some of a clue of what's going on there. I don't believe that they've put up a lot of what they're doing yet, but that seems to be an event that's growing quite rapidly and building some momentum in the space. And it's coming up, I believe, the 19th and 20th of January of next year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Correct.
Just to let everybody know.
Are they? They're doing a crowdfunding again too, right? They're raising money through crowdfunding. Correct. I thought that was curious that they were doing that year 2. So they still charge for
year 1, I guess.
They still charge for tickets, right? Last year too.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So they don't think they have enough groundswell yet to pay for it just out of ticket registrations. How's their fundraising going so far?
I think they seem to be doing okay. Yeah, I haven't checked on it here lately.
Yeah, I was going to load it and look. Podcon.com.
And they are the folks that run VidCon, aren't they?
Yeah,
correct.
Same group.
It's the same.
So they have a pretty big user base or customer base there to pull from to get the word out.
Yeah, it was started and it's run by Hank Green, and then also Jim Lauterbach is now the CEO of VidCon. Now PodCon is kind of like a separate division of the group. It's kind of Hank's kind of side project, but it's definitely in the family, as they say.
$143,000 they've raised of their 300,000 goal. 1,345 backers. So it's just that guy can raise some money, can't he? He's a machine.
Well, it's a big venue, what they rent every year, too. I mean, that Washington State Convention Center is a primo facility. So, yeah, I'm sure it's expensive.
Yeah, I've never done it. I've never seen how those deals work. I think, oftentimes the convention costs are largely offset by the number of vendors you have, but their vendor pricing last year was really inexpensive. So I wonder if that's going to change this year.
No, it was very high.
Oh, was it high?
Yeah, they should leave it where it was.
Yeah, it's actually $600 this year. It was $500 last year.
Oh, like I said, it was. You're being facetious.
Yeah,
that's the cheapest event ever.
Yes.
You know.
Shh, Todd, don't tell him that.
I got my NAB bill here recently. I'm like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me.
Well, even Podcast Movement was certainly nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. So first,
I'll get some of these marketing events, and they'll come up and they're like $20,000 for a 10x10, and we're gonna have 300 people, and I'm like, yeah, we'll pass.
Yeah, and
I
always when they get those types of emails, I take the sponsorship amount, and then I put a division sign, and then I put the number of people they're having attending, and I put equals, and then I'll do a second line, cost effective, and I'll put a different number, divide, and send them basically the comparison.
Right.
And they hate it when I do that because, I'm essentially putting a value on the per head attendee price.
Which was what you have to do.
Right. And I have, if I'm going to have an ROI, I just can't come to the event and not have some ROI. Events like Podcast Movement, it's a little different. It's our industry event. We have to be there. You pay the price and you go. But when it's a different group, it's and they're not primarily podcasting stuff, then yeah, it's like, okay, I'm going to have 20 people that are out of the 300 that are interested in podcasting.
Yeah. Did you guys see this story in Pod News about Spotify enabling the sharing of podcasts directly into the Instagram stories?
It's not live yet.
Oh, it's not live yet?
Yeah. Eventually it'll be live, I believe. But it's not live yet. You can share music right now. You can go into Spotify and you can share music right into Instagram. But when you go to share a podcast track, unless I haven't updated my Spotify app, and I'll do that while we're talking, but unless they've changed it, that's not available yet.
So does it, when you share, does it share the whole track when you share into Instagram on the music side?
I would imagine, unless I don't believe that Spotify is doing any kind of clip activities.
Well, this is going to increase the feeding frenzy, because now the new mastermind groups are like, you got to be in Spotify, and when you're in Spotify, when your episode's up, then you have to go in there and share on Instagram. That'll be the new. That's an extra $49.95 for that piece of information I just shared there.
Right, there you go.
and we're talking.
That's worth $2,000,
right?
Right. Yeah, the original course was $19.95 for 3 hours only.
Yeah, right.
So we've been all over the place today. So, Dave, you guys were talking a little bit about radio while I was typing away.
I don't think Rob's talked about radio much at all. I'd like to hear his thoughts.
They really reacted to Elsie saying that podcasters are scared, and that started a new narrative. We're going to have to tell Elsie not to say that again. She says that she had made a mention in a session that podcasters were scared of radio, and to me, that's do you know where she's coming on that?
Yeah, no, I think there was a little it was apprehensive would be the word, or concerned, but I wouldn't say, we talked about it on the last episode of the feed. We got into talking about that and her quote and the article. But I think in a lot of cases, radio is more afraid of podcasters than podcasters are afraid of radio when you look at how they actually are reacting out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we look at radio as, and radio looks at us as competition. And we look at radio as, okay, whatever, you guys want to come in, fine, come in. It's an open place. Anybody can come in. But there's definitely some people in radio that look at us like we shouldn't be anywhere. We shouldn't be allowed a voice. We don't have a call letter.
Right.
Or the quote the one guy told me from NPR. It was like, originally NPR, public radio was meant to give a voice to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Give anybody a voice. And then when podcasting came around, they said, well, we didn't mean that, anyone.
Right. Okay, so here's the nominees in comedy. Two Girls on a Beach, Bob and Cherry, Botched, a D&D podcast. More Questions Than Answers, Nerds with Words, Tell 'em, Steve, Dave, The Bearded Ones Comedy Podcast, Detroit Cast, The Oddcast, Weird. Those are the 10. The ones that were nominated in the People's Choice category was Around the NFL, Bob and Cherry, Derek and Romaine, Fantasy Football Today, For the Love of Jen Hatmaker, Outlander Cast, Tell 'em Steve Dave, The Fantasy Footballers, Tribal Warfare, Vox the Weeds. The sports shows, I'm going to tell you, the comedy shows and all these other folks better get out the vote because, well, they really can't get out the vote. There's 1,100 people that will be voting. Randomly picked from all the folks that did nominees, but the sports shows always seem to do really, really well in People's Choice. And then there was one category, all you had to do was to register in the category and you made it. I mean, the mature category only had, check this out, I think we had and I have to look at the total number of shows that registered, but the mature category had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 shows. Only 8 shows registered in mature. So next year, that category is going to go away. We'll replace it with something else.
Hey, and we have a correction from the earlier conversation. Spotify does have the share and Instagram stories now available in the latest update. So I just updated the Spotify app, and if you go in, find your podcast, find an episode, click on the 3 little dots next to the episode, then click on share, and you will see now, right below messages, you'll see Instagram stories, and you can now share that.
So it goes in Instagram stories. Interesting.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get the total number of listens or watches out of Instagram?
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck with that one, right?
Yeah, it's Facebook,
well, you know what,
baby.
That's part of
nothing.
You know, I think that's part of the next kind of phase that we're going to have to deal with here, guys. It's content that's derivative, right? I would put this in the category of a little bit of a derivative content distribution, right? How are we going to track that stuff? You know, I mean, it's just another distribution method that kind of disappears into the ether. Kind of, you know, I don't know.
I don't look at it as a distribution method. I look at it as a marketing method, and I don't look at counting it. I look at it as this is a way to get word out. This isn't really the consumption. This isn't how people are going to consume it. This is how the people are going to discover it, and then eventually, once they discover it in Instagram, it's not going to be the ideal way for them to keep consuming it. If they actually like the content, they'll move over to an app that's actually more in tune with consuming.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But, you know, who knows what's going to happen over here? I mean, Instagram is becoming a huge distribution platform for content. So, you know, they may evolve their model.
I don't go to Instagram for 30-minute podcasts. I go to Instagram maybe for a 2-minute or whatever they allow video snippet. I don't know. I don't.
Well,
I guess I'm maybe not that demographic.
Well, I mean, think about the name Instagram. It doesn't say Insta photo, right?
Right.
Now, granted, they're getting in. That name opens the door to a lot of stuff. It could be video. It could be audio. Who knows? Maybe this is Facebook's kind of media consumption app. You know, I don't know. I'm just thinking it's into the future.
It's
here.
Curious that we're using Spotify to get into Instagram.
Right. Yeah. Well, because Spotify's got a lot of content in it, so I guess it makes sense to some degree.
But now you have to wait for your episode to show up in Spotify, then manually go over, find it, episode, hit the triple dots, then share, then Instagram stories, and then it opens up Instagram, and then you say share a story.
Well, therein lies a hack. Someone's going to figure something out to automate that.
Right. That's our job, guys, right?
No.
Yeah. So, guys, I'm going to throw this out. I mean, is crowdfunding a business model?
Okay, so all the podcasters are out there. They can answer this for us. There's some in the chat room here that's been hanging out with us. So if you took all your listener donations that you've ever got, what would 5% of that be? And just those that are in the chat room, and I'm talking about the lifetime of your show. Over the last year, let's say the last year, if you're getting any donations for us, what would 5% of those donations equal up to? Let's see if anybody's brave enough to respond.
Well, here's what I would say. There has always been crowdfunding in podcasting. Back from Leo's early days, putting a donate with PayPal button on there. Dan Carlin, Hardcore History, his crowdfunding, he makes incredible amount of money from his crowdfunding. Matter of fact, he makes more from the crowdfunding and donations than he does from advertising. So, yeah, it's part of it, but it's not anything new. When certain apps release a thing, we're going to now do this. Okay, Patreon's been there and PayPal's been there for a lot longer than that. So this is absolutely nothing new when it's just another person doing it. But crowdfunding is part of podcasting. It's been there since the beginning. as had been called many different things over the years.
Here's something that's really cool, and I'm going to show you guys something here. Here's something that's pretty awesome. On my website, I have this real cool thing here. It's a donation page. Become an insider of Geek News Central. There's a little subscribe button there from PayPal, and they can choose the amount of money that they want to donate. They can start at $5, $2. They can go all the way up to, I even got $50, and they got some big donator numbers in there. Now all I got to do is click the little subscribe button, and guess how much percentage I give a third party? I give them nothing. I keep it all except for the PayPal transaction.
Right. PayPal gets a fee.
Right. But still, no one's writing me a check. That goes right in my PayPal account. So why? Well, I guess if you have no website, no website, I guess you need your host to put that on there for you.
Sure.
Gosh.
Really, I think at the end of the day, I mean, the reason I pose this question is, do we think as we look to the future of this medium, is crowdfunding going to be more important than it is today?
It is more important for the group that are getting between 500 downloads and 5,000 downloads for sure.
Yeah,
you're going to make more money from crowdfunding than you're going to get from advertising at that level.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Because it's immediately when, we've all had these calls or had these emails where someone wants to monetize, and you flip up and look at their numbers and you reply them back and tell them, well, why don't you wait? And they said, well, I can get $600 for my show. And I'm like, no, you can't. If you can, please, I've got a lot of inventory that we can move at $600, so, if you can find the magic sauce on that, please inform me and I'll turn inventory over to you carte blanche. But, that's the case. The smaller shows probably, like you said, I've always said on my show, if I could get my entire audience, even on this show, if we put a PayPal link up on this show, Rob, and we said we'd like everyone to contribute $2 a month, you and I could, we wouldn't have to work so hard.
I think we still would, though.
Yeah, we'd still work, but we might actually be able to, take a real vacation from time to time,
Well, I mean, there are some big shows that have gone that way. Sam Harris, Waking Up with Sam Harris, has stated he's not going to take advertising. He's going purely for crowdfunding, and that's the way he does it. He's gone 100% in on it. Now, I think some people do the hybrid mix, like Dan, where you do both advertising and crowdfunding when you're big enough. But I think if no matter what size podcast you are, you should have some sort of crowdfunding, some way from people to donate to your show, even if it's simply the donate button on the site. Just, hey, you like it? Donate.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't care. How much? You get value? Dan used to say, it still says, $1 a show. You like it? Donate $1 a show. These are nice guys.
Mm-hmm.
So is it the responsibility of our platforms to make that easy, you think?
Well, I think it depends on the platform. If you're Podbean and you're locked into their ecosystem, yes. But, I don't know, maybe with your guys, Rob, maybe with Rob Walsh, Greenlee, you guys are, but Rob Walsh, you guys have a hybrid. You guys have some people that use your site, some people that don't, but those that do still can change the template. So
right, even the ones that use our site, the site has a widget. You can put an HTML5 widget in there. You can put a donate button in. I actually have it on one of my sites. I've got it, shows a little widget with the donate button right in there. So we make it. We don't want to restrict it. My question is this: they say, what should we be doing this for? That what's the value we're adding to the producer by doing it? What's the value that some of these people are adding? A lot of times, the value they're adding is to their own pocketbook, but not to the producer's pocketbook. And so you have to wonder about that part of it.
Well, it's not a profit center for us,
mm-hmm.
And if it's a profit center for your company, and you have to ask, you know.
We went the route of making My Libsyn, which is the premium, where you offer content in exchange. So you're actually offering up premium content rather
Right.
than a donation model. And because some people don't want to go and people hate when I say this, but when you put a pure donation button, you're basically putting a hat out there saying put money in the hat.
Yeah.
And some people aren't comfortable saying that. Some people can't do that. They're okay with saying, hey, I got this extra content. If you give me some money, you can have access to it. And they feel better with that. Different people have different levels of comfort. I am one of those. I would rather say to someone, I've got something extra for you, give me some money, rather than saying, just give me money. But varying people have varying levels of what they are comfortable doing and not doing.
Being that I have advertiser in my main show, I think people feel less obligated to donate because they know I'm getting a check from the advertiser.
Right.
And but I've tried to emphasize over the years that this party's been going on a long time. I've been sponsored with them for 14 years. I'm still beholden to performance. I have to perform. If I don't perform, then there's no guarantee they're not going to stay sponsor my show out of the kindness of their heart. So I've tried to hedge over the years in building up enough listener support that things won't completely tank if I lose my primary sponsor. I have to go out there and hustle and get another one for sure. But it's definitely, I think that's my main goal was to build up a base that we wouldn't completely have to shut down everything if we lost a sponsor. But I'm also paying bloggers, and I have ongoing monthly expenses for the site, just to keep things running the way they are. It's about $1,000 a month. But not all podcasters are, they have a hosting fee. That's it. Usually maybe a web host fee. They don't have big outlays.
So what do you guys think of the announcement that Audible, I don't know if it's an announcement, but Audible kind of getting out of podcasting?
Well, they never were in podcasting.
I know. That's a whole other twist on it, right?
The irony is Audible actually has podcasts. They actually have a few really good podcasts that are their own created content that they create and make available as podcasts, which is different than the content that they were trying to bring in from other people that they didn't make available as podcasts. So the podcast that Audible did have had nothing to do with the group that said they were going to do podcasting. So I go weigh that. But yeah, I don't think it was anything other than they tried an experiment, it didn't work.
Yeah, and I definitely think that that's exactly what it is, and they weren't really in podcasting. So
yeah, I think we were fairly critical of them for going around saying that they were a podcasting platform when at the time they didn't make much available outside of their own little or their own listening kind of proprietary platform. But then they started to put some of their shows outside of that platform, and but maybe it was too little too late for them, or it just didn't scale, or they had too much competition in the market or something. But that team seems to be dismantled now, right? They're gone.
Well, this is not their first rodeo either, so...
Oh, no. Yeah, well, we could talk about the past,
And there's another group inside Audible that is actually doing podcasts, so they do have podcasts.
But did they... There was some question. Are
they still there?
Yeah. That's reassuring, at least for those content creators, yeah.
Yeah, because I think they had, a half dozen shows that are actively being produced, right?
Yeah, and some of them are getting really good numbers. So
yeah.
Well, folks, even though we started late, we're nearing an hour 30 here, so I want to wrap us up.
And my wife's poked her head in twice.
Oh, she has. So she's like, "What are you doing?"
Third time, I'm going to be in trouble.
All right. So Rob Walsh, how can they reach you?
Rob@libsyn.com, and you can find me on the feed with Elsie, thefeed.libsyn.com. You can find us there, or just search for The Feed Libsyn. You have to add the word Libsyn, and it won't show up in iTunes and other places.
Rob Greenlee?
You can find me on Twitter at Rob Greenlee. You can reach me via email, rob at Spreaker or rob at voxnest.com. And you can go check out my very kind of argumentative episode at the SpreakerLiveShow.com. The most recent episode there where I talk about the Alex Jones stuff. So
I bet you that's a fun one. All right, of course, I'm Todd Cochran, Todd at Blueberry.com, at Geek News on Twitter. You can find me at geeknewscentral.com, of course, here at newmediashow.com. Subscribe, please. And, of course, your podcast, which you can find at powerpresspodcast.com, which is the bi-weekly podcast Mike Dell and I do about podcasting it over at Blueberry. So thanks for hanging in. Thanks for showing up late. Sorry we weren't on Facebook. Again, I think I banned myself by streaming for 5 minutes with no shirt on. Yes, sorry for those of you that had to throw up in your mouth. But
that video will be up on YouPorn in about 10 minutes.
I told Daniel in text, I said, and lucky you told me, because 3 minutes later, or 30 seconds later, I'd have stood up and they'd have seen me in my underwear. So, yeah, not a good thing. That would have been great. So, all right, everybody, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Everyone take care. Aloha.
Bye.